watching my grand.
All right, y'all ready to roll?
Ready to roll. Let's go.
So much. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals. Is my microphone on? Can you hear me now? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting. The date is March the 13th. The time is 6 o'clock. If we could have a roll call.
Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mr. Brumfield?
Here.
Mr. Yeaman?
Here.
Ms. Deering?
Here.
Mr. Craddock?
Here.
Mr. Merricks?
Here.
Mr. Easley?
Here. Thank you. If you all would, please stand and join me in a moment of silence and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Members of the board, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do I hear any additions or corrections to that agenda?
I move to be approved as presented.
Okay, we got a motion.
Second.
Second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, make it known by voting aye or yes. Excuse me. Carl's waiting. There we go. All right, thank you. You have in your packet the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as written.
Okay. I have a motion for approval of the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, make it known. Excuse me. All right. Any old business, Ms. Ragsdale?
We do not have any old business.
Okay. New business?
You will not have an April Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We do not have any cases for next month, but we will have our next bi-weekly joint zoning ordinance update workshop. That will be on April 12th. There is a list of the remaining dates for 2023 at your place in front of you. All of these meetings have been moved to 5:30 p.m. and they will be in this room.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I have no chairman's report. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to Article 5, Division 7 of the Pennsylvania County Zoning Ordinance, we, the Board of Zoning Appeals, have been empowered to hear and decide specific applications and appeals in support of said ordinance. In accomplishing this important task, we are charged with promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Pennsylvania County. We must ensure that all our decisions and recommendations be directed to these goals and that each be consistent with the environment, excuse me, the comprehensive plan, and in the best interests of Pennsylvania County, its citizens, and its posterity. Anyone here to speak to the board other than the applicant regarding zoning cases will be limited to 3 minutes. Okay. The time is now 6:04. We will open case S-23-001, Appalachian Power Company. Ms. Ragsdale, your report.
Case S-23-001, Appalachian Power Company has petitioned for a special use permit on 0.34 acres located on Highway 360 Old Richmond Road in the Dan River Election District to allow for a transmission line. On February 7, 2023, the Planning Commission recommended by a 7-0 vote with no opposition that the special use permit be granted. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Craig Pritt is here to represent the petition.
Okay, sir. Speak up a little bit more if you can, or is it on?
I don't think it's on.
How's that?
That's good.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. My name is Craig Pritt, on behalf of Appalachian Power representing this case. Similar to the Planning Commission meeting, and out of respect to everybody's time, we'll forego the presentation, and I'm here for questions if need be.
Any questions for the applicant?
No, no question.
Okay. All right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want this off?
No, you can
just
leave
leave
it
it on. There's no one signed up for, from the public to speak. So with that being said, the time is 6:06. We'll close the public hearing on case S-23-001. Comments?
I see no reason not to have a positive motion, so I would make a positive motion to approve the application for S-23-001 special use permit.
All right, sir.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for a positive motion. So I'll read a positive motion. We'll see how that goes. Whereas Appalachian Power Company has petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for a public utilities transmission line, and whereas we see no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and whereas there are no significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated, I move that this special use permit be granted.
Absolutely.
We've got a motion from Mr. Merrick's and a second from Ms. Deering. All those in favor? All right, the motion is approved. Thank you, sir. The time is now 6:08. We'll open public hearing case S-23-002, Hillendale Solar LLC. Ms. Ragsdale, your report.
Case S-23-002, Hillendale Solar LLC has petitioned for a special use permit on 1,555.39 acres located on State Road 639 Honeybee Road, State Road 761 Straightstone Road, State Road 603 Watts Road, State Road 668 Cody Road, and State Road 669 Mellon Road in the Bannister Election District and the Stanton River Election District for a utility-scale solar energy facility. On February 7, 2023, the Planning Commission recommended by a 6-1 vote with opposition that the special use permit be granted with the 17 conditions recommended by staff. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, a representative from Hillendale Solar is here to represent the petition.
Okay.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board. My name is Dan Michaud. I'm a solar project developer with Strata Clean Energy. Very happy to be here to present to you all tonight. Thank you for having me. Strata's been working on this project for almost 5 years. There are 23 landowner partners who have stuck with us through that time. Several are here tonight to speak in favor of the project. With me, I have a wonderful team of professionals, including my co-development partner, Danielle Walker. Louis Ione, whom you may recall from the Berry Hill Solar facility hearing, which is across from the mega site at Berry Hill, is here with us as well. Sam Sink, our Vice President of Commercial Operations, Chris Blanco, our civil engineer, is here. The team's here to answer the board's questions as well as the public's questions, which may come up through the public hearing. The team's done a lot of community outreach, which I'll touch on throughout the presentation. Tonight's agenda will include a reintroduction of Strata, since it's been a couple of years since we've been before the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'll take a few minutes to go over the project and the community outreach that we've done to date. Touch on the benefits that this project will bring to the community, landowners, and local businesses. Finally, I'll touch on some of the technical details of the site plan and how our proposal conforms to key aspects of the county's solar ordinance and the recommended conditions of approval. So Strata was founded in 2008 in Durham, North Carolina. We're a family-owned business, and we've grown to around 400 people. We've been building and operating utility-scale solar facilities since 2011. We've constructed and continue to own and operate hundreds of facilities in North Carolina, and it's our reputation for quality work that helped us expand into the Commonwealth of Virginia. Virginia is a core market for us and for all aspects of our business: development, engineering and construction, and operations and maintenance. We've built 12 utility-scale solar projects across Virginia, ranging from size between 15 megawatts to over 200 megawatts. We're currently building another 10 utility-scale solar projects between 26 and 175 megawatts. We operate and maintain 35 solar facilities under contract with Dominion. These projects were built by Strata for Dominion between 2018 and 2021. Projects we built are currently all over Virginia. Of the 12 that were completed between 2019 and 2021, we developed them ourselves. And we're currently building these 10 projects for Dominion. Hillendale Solar is a 102 megawatt utility scale solar project located in a remote part of the county. We have 12 parcels of land that is owned by 23 landowners, totaling just over 1,500 acres. Of that acreage, we're proposing solar panels on approximately 450. The rest of the land will serve as landscape buffers, stormwater management facilities, and preserved open space. Back in the summertime, before finalizing our application, we sent project information out to surrounding landowners and invited them to an open house. We hosted an open house at the Hurt Motley Community Center for surrounding landowners to come and learn about the project and get their questions asked and answered. Turnout was good. We had a lot of meaningful conversations about view shed and construction traffic. After finalizing and submitting the application, we sent another letter out to surrounding landowners with information about the final footprint and contact information. We fielded several phone calls about the project and its location relative to neighboring properties. Y'all are not strangers to utility scale solar, so I'm sure some of this will be known to y'all, but solar project will generate revenue for Pittsylvania County in several ways. More revenue for counties helps fund critical services, capital expenditures, or just continue to keep property taxes low. Solar projects provide meaningful and well-paid jobs during construction and operations. They create significant opportunities for local businesses, including fuel supply, fencing, landscaping materials, machining and fabrication, equipment repair, accommodation, food services, among others. Landowners can also generate reliable income from their land that they may not be in a position to develop themselves. Finally, solar projects provide an opportunity to generate locally produced, low-cost, reliable power that does not generate harmful air emissions or waste during operations. Strata and the county entered into a siting agreement, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors. The county will be paid nearly $9 million over the project life, with a substantial portion of that being paid up front. Can be used to fund services, capital projects, capital equipment, or anything that happens to be in the capital budget. This is our site plan. We have plenty of land to ensure that setbacks and vegetative screening is in compliance fully with the county's solar zoning ordinance. This is a very well hidden site. Most of the properties have mature timber that is 25 feet or higher, and we work with landowners to preserve these areas instead of cutting down and replanting. We prefer to maintain the existing buffers. We avoid wetlands and streams, as well as cultural and historical resources. We are planting solar panels on approximately 450 acres of this larger footprint. This is the view of the parcel boundaries with the solar panels. The fence line is shown in yellow. Panels are set back 150 feet from property lines, 200 feet from residential property lines, and have a 100-foot vegetative buffer, mostly preserved for this project given the mature timber. And our substation, where we will connect to the transmission line, is located directly below the transmission line and will not require additional transmission line be built to connect our project. No additional overhead. Staff recommended a set of conditions which we support, including staff's review and approval of our final site plan prior to any permits being issued to begin construction, preparation and submittal of a construction traffic management plan, landscape maintenance plan, viewshed protection plan for staff's review and approval. Roads are to be repaired to pre-construction conditions. We'll prepare an erosion and sediment control plan and bond. We'll also maintain a decommissioning bond and do annual fire and rescue training for first responders. And with that, I will open it up to questions, and if there are any other questions following the public hearing, we would certainly appreciate an opportunity to answer those questions at the time as well. Yes, sir.
When you come down Wyatt Road, the property that's on the right, there's no panels shown on that property. I think it's two different pieces of property there.
No panels shown on the right. Is that where it straddles the county line? You want to field that question? Thanks. This is Chris Blanco, civil engineer. He's got a site plan.
How you doing? Chris Blanco, civil engineer. I think you're referring to Wyatt's Road, where we've got panels on the east of the road, and then to the west there's nothing. Is that right?
Well, if you're coming down,
I guess, yeah. Which way are you traveling?
yes, let's come down Straight Stone Road and
Uh-huh.
take a right on Wyatt Road.
Uh-huh.
You come down Wyatt Road, on the right, there's some property down there. I don't see panels shown on that property. Is that correct?
That's right. And that's because, if I'm looking at it correctly, it's mostly composed of wetlands that are just not buildable area. But we've still got that land under contract to run our wires through there to connect the project together. Thanks.
Excuse me, the comment was made about vegetation that's currently there. Now, like Mr. Brumfield, I saw a lot of pine trees on White Road. So will they be 100 feet, 150, 200 feet of vegetative screen that will be left, those pine trees that are currently there?
Yes, so anything that is worth keeping to provide vegetative buffer will be maintained, and 100 feet is the minimum as part of the ordinance and our conditions. So yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Most of these solar projects are in an LLC, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is that what happens if the LLCs go under, solar doesn't work? I know you have a bond, we have a bond that secures the cleanup and various things, but all of them are in our LLC, and it just concerns me that what happens if they don't? What is the amount of your bond, and what percentage of that would be used for cleanup?
Right. So the bond is sized to a third-party engineer's decommissioning estimate. So that we post a bond for the full value of the estimate of decommissioning at a future time, and that estimate is revised every 5 years, I believe, as part of permit conditions, if I'm not mistaken. So, currently there's not a tremendous amount of data on the cost to decommission a solar project because there aren't that many being decommissioned. And so the formula for determining the value is usually kind of a back calculation using today's costs for installing and moving that amount of material. But the obligation to revise the decommissioning estimate every 5 years means that in, say, 20 years, as when we have more data, we can revise the estimate based on projects being decommissioned at the time.
Thank you.
Who will own the solar field?
So we currently own this project, and we could build it and own and operate it ourselves and sell the power under a power purchase agreement. In Virginia, to date, we have sold our projects to Dominion, and then because our largest business is engineering and construction, we've also executed an engineering and construction agreement with Dominion as part of the asset sale. So then we build it for them. We don't go away. We're still around. We do the design and the construction. And then we currently we operate 35 facilities for them in the Commonwealth. So ideally, we get to become their long-term operations and maintenance service provider as well. So typically, we have sold the projects to Dominion, and they'll be the long-term owner, but it doesn't have to be the case here. That's what we've done in the past, but we could sell it to Dominion. That would be great, but we could also build it ourselves and sell the power.
Any more questions for the applicant?
I have one more. On the map that I'm looking at, is if you're coming down Straight Stone Road, before you get to Wyatt's Road, there's a piece of property on the right, I noticed had some flags and stuff up there, but I don't see it listed on our map that we have here.
Flags or the signs?
There's a sign there. It was maybe a 20-acre tract before you get to the Wyatt Road. I just noticed that it was separate from the other property when I rode down through there.
Okay. I am not entirely sure about that sign. Lewis is looking at the map now, and he worked with landowners to make sure the signs were put out there.
I believe there's a tiny piece of a parcel where you're speaking of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you speaking of where there's a sign facing Straight Stone and a sign facing Wyatt
If
on a
you're
corner?
driving towards the river. If you're coming down Straight Stone Road, headed to the river,
Right,
Wyatt's Road is on the right.
right.
This property was before you got to Wyatt's Road. It's on the right. Prior to Wyatt's Road. Yeah.
Can we speak into the microphone so that the public can,
I'm
the
sorry.
public can hear us?
Yes, okay.
That's okay. Yes, please.
Okay, so the first sign you'd come to going up Straight Stone Road,
That is correct.
that, I believe, is the northern end of, name is escaping me, it's a long parcel that runs all the way down and abuts Wyatt's Road as well. And we have, I believe we're just going through there with the interconnection line, right? So we're just going through there with a transmission line, basically. But the law, the ordinance is you have to put a sign on every parcel that adjacent to, if it abuts a road, you have to put a sign there. So even though the work we're doing is probably a quarter mile away, we have to put a sign on that road.
So you're doing the work on Wyatt's Road, but the property joins Straight Stone Road, so that's why the sign's up. in
That's
that
what the ordinance says, yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. There are areas where we'll have medium voltage cable connecting solar panels to other solar panels, and everything's being collected to head up to the transmission line. And so areas where we don't have panels are still part of the special use permit, and so they needed a sign posted for the public hearing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you, sir. We may have some here.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, I would like, for the record, to correct the statement I made in my staff summary. There were 19 conditions recommended by staff, not 17, but they are all listed in your packet.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, from the public to speak, we have Chuck Angier.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Chuck Angier, and I am from the Callens-Gretna District. And I want you to know that I am 120% in favor of solar. In fact, I would love to see every house in the county with their own little generator, off-grid, and independent. Of course, having independent folks is not something the government's interested in, but that's not in your purview. I could go on for hours about why I think utility scale is a bad idea, but that's not in your purview either. What is in your purview is the fact that we've got 18,500 acres already under solar, and to be honest with you, Ms. Ragsdale, I don't know if this is included in that 18,500 or not. But in this county, they have become a topic of conversation wherever you go, especially the eyesores that they create, and the headache, and the mess. So that is something that is within your purview and should be considered. And I also want the county residents to know, I haven't attended a lot of meetings in the county. Sometimes I get the impression that whatever's before the board needs to be approved if it meets the technical requirements of whatever's going on. And I began to wonder, well, how do you get away from that and actually get into who makes a decision based on the goodness of the county or the area? And I found out that the Supreme Court of Virginia has ruled on this several times, and I was not aware of that. And I want the county to know, the county residents to know, that just because a project comes before you that has met all the technical requirements, you are not required to approve that project because it meets those requirements. In fact, in one case, they said that, this is quoting the Supreme Court now, that a government body is not stripped of all discretion in the issuance of a special use permit merely upon showing that the technical requirements of a zoning ordinance have been met. And you know, and there's some other quotes from the Supreme Court also, but One of the most important things to consider is if the proposed use would negatively impact the neighborhood. Well, it's kind of hard to define a neighborhood in Pittsylvania County because we're, 600 some odd thousand acres, I believe, and like one person per every 10 acres is our population density. But aside from maybe a $500 million casino on our outskirts, I can't think of anything that impacts our community more than solar farms scattered all over the county. So I encourage you to use your discretion in this case and others, and I want the county residents to know that you have the discretion to turn this down, even if the requirements are met. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your service.
Alan Casper.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to speak to you a little bit tonight because I have some grave concerns about the solar project. I'm a resident of the Bannister District. I live on Straight Stone Road. On the front page of the agenda tonight, it said one of the chief functions of this board is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County. I know a lot about that. I've been doing it for 41 years. I'm the assistant chief of the fire department that is the first deer responding agency to this project. I'm the fire and rescue commissioner for the Bannister District. For my occupation, I'm a senior radiation control technician at a nuclear manufacturing facility. I know a lot about health and safety. The Board of Supervisors has a pending ordinance change directly affecting these solar farms, but it won't affect this project because it will be grandfathered in. Now, the reason the board is looking at a ordinance change is because of their concerns. We don't need to let this slide under the radar. I've done some research on this. Your solar panels, which are about 80% manufactured in China, have the potential to leach chemicals into your groundwater over the years. Read a very interesting article you might want to. It came out of Forbes, The Dark Side of Solar Fields. Like I said, I'm the deputy chief of a small fire department that serves this area, First Due. I have 2 fire engines, a tanker, and a brush truck. You're talking over 1,000-acre solar project, as the gentleman that spoke a little while ago said, in a remote area of the county. And it is. If you spend much time in the northeast corner of the county, we're remote. Help coming to us in an emergency, if it exceeds our capabilities, it's 15, 20 miles away. I've fought enough fire to know that a lot can happen in that time. Like I said, I have grave concerns about this. And if we truly want to promote the health and safety and general welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County, we will not approve this zoning because you're putting the citizens of the Bannister District and the Stanton River District at risk. Like I said, the Board of Supervisors has a pending ordinance change that's going to severely restrict solar farm development in Pennsylvania County. There's a reason for that. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your concerns. And no matter how things work out, I will continue to serve the citizens of Pennsylvania County like I've done for the last 41 years. Thank you.
Jill Cathy, I'm pronouncing that correct.
Good evening. My name's Joel Cathy. I'm one of the landowners that this solar project would, the solar panels would be on. I'd like to encourage the county to pass this ordinance. It's a great way of county getting funds without consuming a lot of county services. The project is well shielded. People that don't like solar, it's well shielded. It will not be seen very easily. And I would encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Barbara Dalton.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Dalton. I live in the Gretna-Callens district, but my family farm is involved in this solar project. I think Strata has done a wonderful job presenting their plans, the work they have done in the past 5 years. And the only thing that I wanted to add, if you will look in your packet, this map, it's on page 76, has been blown up. And it will show you where the panels will be placed in this project. Now, I know some of you have been down and looked. This area, the line is Halifax County, Campbell County. And if you do not pass this, I'm sure they will, because it is a remote area. It is not agricultural area. Nothing has ever been grown in the land that is in this project, except pines. And they're not doing all that great doing that. Thank you. We do support it.
Thank you, ma'am. James Mashburn.
Good evening. My name is James Mashburn. Thank you, Board, for hearing us out. I live on property that is on Wyatt's Road, and it was once part of a property that was actually deeded to a Waller family back in 1750 as part of 12,000 acres. Of course, it's not that large now, but on our property, we've got ancestors that were buried there that actually gave their life in blood to save this land that we live on and the adjoining properties that are around us. And I have kids that live on our property or our adjoining property. I've got grandkids now that are living on adjoining property. And I appreciate the questions about what that does long term, because as this company builds these things, we don't know what it's going to do long term. We were personally approached with a fairly large sum of money to allow a line to go through our property, and we said no, because quite frankly, we're not willing to sell our soul and in the future of our grandkids for a little bit of money right now. And I would hope that this board would be advocates for those of our families that don't want to be in an industrial area. In fact, we live there so that we don't have to be in an industrial area. We live there and we choose to live there because we don't want the traffic. We don't want the industry there. If we wanted the industry, we would have moved somewhere else. Why would we want in this beautiful rural area to rape the land? And quite frankly, I'm ashamed of the neighbors that I live around that were willing to sell their soul for just such a cheap price. And I would hope that this board would advocate for those of us families that don't want to see that. Because guess what? God's not making any more lands. And once you give it up, that land's never coming back. Once we give that land up, it can never be used again for any hunting. It can never be used again for any wildlife, any hiking, family activity. It's gone. All right? And what it does to the landscape, it is an eyesore. And we've got to live with that then the rest of our lives, but not only our lives, but my kids and grandkids get to live with that the rest of their lives. And who knows what that does long term to them. And so I would hope and pray that this board would advocate for those of us families that don't want to see this eyesore in an area that we live in so that we don't have to live in an industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sherry Queener.
My name is Sherry Queener, and I have land that's in the vicinity of this project, and I support the project. It will allow for the county to have a lot of extra funds through revenue and taxes and stuff. And it's going to be so remote that you're not going to be able to see it as good as some people were saying the eyesore. So I'm just here to say I support it.
Cindy Reynolds.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Reynolds, and I do have land in the Straitstone District. I support this totally and completely. I feel like it will benefit our county, and as my sister who spoke just before, it is a very remote area. I've been there 59 years. A lot of people can't say that. I know what's in Straitstone, and I think it will benefit the landowners and the county, and I have grandchildren. My grandchildren will have property down there when I'm gone. So I plan on my children and my grandchildren to be there for a very long time. Our family farm has been in the family for 100 years. So I feel like that this will be a benefit to our community and to our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Kelly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Kelly, and I am from Pennsylvania County. I am one of the landowners in this project. And for the land that I am a part of, this would be a good use for it. It does not grow things. This would be a good use for it. So I do hope that you will approve this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Linda Rutledge.
Hi, my name is Linda Rutledge, and I am also a landowner, and I also have grandkids. And the farm that we have that we are putting into this, it's not a lot grown on it. We do not get hardly any income off of it, and I think it would be very good to be put into solar panels to help bring in extra money. And I hope you all support this because we support it 100%. Thank you.
Becky Robertson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board, staff members, and fellow Pennsylvanians. My name is Becky Robertson. I live in the Stanton River District. I am a shared landowner along with my brother, sister, and 2 cousins. The land we own is under a lease agreement for studying the feasibility of a solar panel project. I am here to speak in support of rezoning this land for that project. Fossil fuels are finite. They will not last forever. In addition, fossil fuels release harmful gases, polluting our environment. The sun is a sustainable source of energy to power homes and businesses if solar panels are used to harvest that energy. The sun comes up each morning and will continue to do so for as long as God allows this world to stand. Each morning brings a fresh new day filled with sunlight. Everywhere on earth gets sunlight, which could be used to generate electricity in any climate anywhere on earth. Solar panels do not cause greenhouse gases. In addition, the panels are silent and space-saving. The use of solar panels could serve to lessen the strain on our electrical grid. Solar panels would allow this country to become more energy dependent by reducing dependence on foreign oil and fuels, which might also academically help wallets at the gas pumps. Economically, many benefits will be realized from solar panel projects. Money invested in solar panels will create more jobs. There will be need to have workforce development for utility solar panel construction projects, for operations and maintenance training of utility-scale solar community farms. Jobs will be created in the communities, which will put more money in the pockets of consumers to purchase goods and services in Pittsylvania County, and in addition, pay taxes on these earnings. Of course, the job training these employees receive will increase their skill level. As Jimmy Blank stated at the Planning Commission meeting in February, currently much of the land in question and the land that we own is wet and rocky and only good for growing pine trees, from which it takes 30 to 40 years to reap much monetary value. Solar panels will provide yearly rent money for the landowners, which will aid them in paying real estate taxes on this land. In addition, landowners will also, in turn, pay taxes on the money that they receive for the lease of their land, generating more money for the county, state. The county will also receive tax revenue from the solar companies. The solar panels aiding in creating more electricity should lessen the strain on the electrical grid. Electricity production with solar panels should be cheaper and help to reduce energy bills for all consumers. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I am 100% in favor of this project, and I hope you will find it in your means and power to vote this project a yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's all. That's the list of the people who have signed up from the public to speak. Mr. Michael, would you like to rebut anything that's been brought up? I may have your last name wrong. I apologize.
As far as the eyesores go, I think some of the earlier projects in the Commonwealth did not, maybe weren't put in the best locations. I've seen a lot of solar projects. I do think this is one of the best locations given the remote area, our ability to hide the panels from view because of the mature vegetation that we can maintain in place. 100-foot vegetative buffers are substantial to block the view. Solar panels do not leach chemicals. There's nothing liquid. The facilities have steel foundations, the electrical equipment mounted on top, and then some concrete where necessary for substation equipment. Nothing is particularly different about solar panel equipment design and construction from other types of electrical facility design and construction. As far as emergency response goes, the National Fire Protection Agency has training specifically for solar, so this is a fairly well understood response situation. We're also required to do annual fire and rescue training with first responders as part of our permit conditions, and these are very quiet facilities. There's no air emissions. I wouldn't characterize it as creating an industrial area, particularly in this location where we're planning to install this project, if it is the will of the board tonight to approve a permit. Do y'all have any other questions for Strata?
Any other questions or comments for the applicant? Okay. All right. If we have no more questions for the applicant, and we've heard from the public, then the time is 6:49, and we will close the public hearing. I'm being advised that our computers are down, so we'll have to Go back to old style hand voting. Might be a little easier. Oh, well.
Up and down.
All right, I understand we're good to go.
You should all be back online so you can vote.
Pardon me? We
You
can
should
vote
be all
online.
back
Okay.
online.
Comments from the board?
Well, I've drove down and looked at these properties. It is a remote area of the county. There are some people that are against this and some are in favor. I think that as I have drove through the county, I understand the solar facilities that are out there that are very visible, and there's a lot of opposition against those. But we do have some that have been shielded very well with the landscaping and stuff. So with the setbacks that I see that we have on this project and with the 100-foot wide landscaping, oh, yes, I can. Would you like me to repeat? But anyway, I'm in favor of this. Now, if the board feels that we need to go further with the setbacks or further with the screening to better shield the panels from view, I could support that also.
I'm like you, Mr. Brumfield. We've got 1,500 acres of land, and it's going to be something in the neighborhood of 450 acres of actual solar panels. And as several of the folks that spoke, it is a remote area. That's good and that's bad from a safety point of view of a firefighter. I understand. I guess looking at it from the picture of the county, as far as remoteness or visual aspect, I'd say it's in about as good a location probably as it can be, if the board is of the opinion that we approve it. Also, we have 19 conditions that have been recommended by the staff, and that's something that I would recommend that if we read a positive motion, that these 19 conditions be included in that motion. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I rode out there myself and looked at it, and I certainly understand the comments made tonight, those both for and against. I'm glad to know that the county supervisors have finally decided to do something, because I think we've got too much of our land in solar panels. Now, that's a personal opinion, and I'm here on this board. I cannot vote my personal opinion. However, when I go out there and look at the farm and the trees, and it's pretty out there. And people want to go out there and get away from everything. That's the place to go. But that being said, we have an obligation to find adverse effects that can be mitigated through conditions. it gets to this level, it's a very tough place to make those decisions. And I heard Mr. Angier, and I certainly understand that. And at the same time, solar is with us. It's going to be with us. Personally, I like to see it benefit the consumer more than it does the big company. When I see it in my pocketbook, I might like it better. But at the same time, I haven't seen that happen, nor have I seen any dollars coming into the county yet, but they say they will. But that being said, given the location, and I hate to use the word remote because it's really nice out there, but as far as eyesore, as far as depreciation of land, I don't think that's something that's not that documented. I can probably see a positive motion.
Okay. Any other comments?
I want to say this.
Yes.
When one drives down Straight Stone Road and they go by the Cedar Forest place there, it's a very nice place, and they drive a little bit farther and there's a mill on the left, definitely do not want to do anything that would affect the appearance of that area. And that's why I brought up the things of setbacks. If the board feels that the setbacks from, and the road that concerns me the most is Straight Stone Road. If the board feels that the setbacks are back farther enough from that road and the shielding will be thick enough, then I would support a favorable motion. But that is my only concern.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, please, we've already closed the public hearing. So are you recommending that we move the setbacks
What
back
I'm
further,
I'm just maybe looking for views from other members of the board. I'm okay with that, but maybe someone on the board feels a little different, but that of all of the project, I'm okay. I'm in favor of the project. It's just, let's make sure that the screening and the setbacks are right. And if, I don't know who else went down there.
Mr. Chairman, I think that what we have in our packet, the scale is so large, it's kind of hard to tell exactly where this place Mr. Brumfield is talking about is on the map. Maybe if we could ask the folks from Stratter to clarify what exactly it looks like in that exact location.
Could you all do that for us? Could you show us how far actually the setback is off, say, Straight Stone Road? Where the solar panels would begin, I guess, is what we're asking.
Can we approach the...
Yes, sir, please do.
So we've got our site plan here. Who should, Mr. Brumfield? Mr. Brumfield.
Before you all leave, would you mind rehabbing that conversation on the microphone so that we can get it on the record and the public can hear it?
So what I have asked is that they show the view shed of when one is driving down the Straight Stone Road in the area of Cedar Forest. And I wanted to see if someone's driving down the road, what they would see looking off. If the screening is done right, the view of the solar panels should be blocked. That's what I'm concerned about and want to make sure of.
So, Mr. Brumfield, this is a visual representation of a view shed technical analysis we had done by a third-party engineering firm. And the red areas are where the project is visible, 40 to 50% of the solar panels are visible from that location. This is with the preserved vegetative screening. And so if you look over in the same location we were just discussing, there is zero visibility from that vantage point.
With this screening in place?
With the screening,
So
yes,
it
sir.
looks like,
The
if I'm
screening-
looking at this map correctly, if you go down Honeybee Road, you could see a little bit of solar panels.
Yes, so over in the northeast, where it's a little bit kind of off-white, then you get into the, up to 10% from that location. But this is what it looks like with no screening. And here you have screening as required by the ordinance and 19 conditions, and which is being proposed as preserved vegetative buffer.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you. All right, so do we have someone that would like a motion to make a positive motion with the 19 conditions that I will read upon a positive motion? I'll make that motion. Okay. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so we have a positive motion and a second, so if you all will bear with me, I'm going to read the 19 conditions so everyone here can hear them. Whereas Hill and Dale Solar LLC has petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for a utility-scale solar energy facility. And whereas we find no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and whereas there are no significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated through conditions, I move the special use permit be granted with the following conditions. Site development plan location. All solar panels and other above-ground equipment will be located within the project area shown on conceptual site plan included with the special use permit application. All site plan requirements of Section 35-141 must be met before permits are issued. Height, except for the collection yard and substation or otherwise as required by applicable building code, the maximum height of the solar panels and other above-ground equipment will be 15 feet. Setbacks, except for fencing and any pole-mounted electronic lines consistent with the county ordinance, all above-ground equipment shall meet the setback requirements set forth in Section 35-141D. No setbacks are required between the parcel lines of parcels that are part of a single project. No setbacks are required between the parcel lines of parcels that are part of a single project. Already read that. Fencing.
Fencing for the project will be standard chain length of at least 6 feet high. The applicant shall maintain the fence for the life of the project. Landscaping. Applicant will comply with Section 35-121 fencing screening. At the perimeter locations, the setback will include a minimum 100-foot wide landscaped area comprised of any existing vegetation, supplemented as needed with a staggered row of planted trees and large shrubs. All rows of planted vegetation shall be evergreen plantings of varieties native or adaptable to the region, with one row consisting of a variety expected to reach a minimum height of 25 feet, and the remaining rows of varieties designed to reach at least 15 feet in height at maturity. All evergreens shall be a minimum of 6 feet in height at the time of planting. Existing vegetation shall be maintained and supplemented with new plantings as needed to maintain required screening. Prior to construction and site plan approval, a landscaping maintenance plan will be submitted to the zoning administrator for approval, which shall provide for the posting of a bond or other surety in an amount sufficient to ensure that the plantings are successfully established and the landscaping is maintained or replaced during the life of the project. Landscape renderings or simulations shall be sealed by a registered landscape architect. Construction management and mitigation. Prior to construction, the applicant shall prepare and submit to the zoning administrator a construction management plan to address traffic control methods, site access, fencing, lighting, mitigation of construction operations, and hours of construction activity. View shed protection. The view shed protection plan shall be submitted to and approved by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of permits, identifying appropriate measures that will be taken to protect the view sheds surrounding the project during construction. Road repairs. All public and private roads must remain open during construction. Any damages to roads caused by construction will be promptly repaired to pre-construction condition and/or VDOT standards where deemed necessary. Erosion and sediment control. Prior to construction, an approved erosion and sediment control plan will be implemented for the entire project, and an erosion and sediment control bond will be provided. Stormwater management. Prior to construction, a Virginia Stormwater Management Program permit from the Virginia DEQ will be obtained for the project, including an approved stormwater pollution prevention plan. Operational noise and electrical interference. The project will comply with all applicable county requirements for noise and shall not generate or create electrical interruptions or interference with existing electrical or electronic uses. Operational light. Fixed lighting at the perimeter of the project will be limited to gates and will be shielded downward facing to minimize light spillage and shall be motion activated. Compliance. The project shall be designed, constructed, and tested to meet all applicable local, state, and federal standards. Decommissioning. In accordance with Section 35-141E, the applicant shall completely decommission the facility within 12 months if the facility ceases to generate electricity for a continuous period of 12 months, including all solar collectors, cabling, electrical components, fencing, and any other associated equipment, facilities, and structures. Prior to construction and approval of the entire site plan, a decommissioning plan will be submitted to the zoning administrator, which shall provide for the posting of a bond or other surety acceptable to the county in the amount of the decommissioning cost, not including salvage value for the project. Start of construction. The special use permit will expire unless construction on the entire project is commenced within 3 years of the date of issuance of the special use permit. Survival. So long as the project is operated in conformance with these conditions, the special use permit shall continue for the life of the project. Comply with all DEQ regulations regarding non-point source pollutants. Chemical sprays used in weed control shall comply with DEQ regulations. Fire and rescue training. The applicant shall provide annual training to the local fire department regarding solar energy facilities. ordinance compliance. The project shall remain in compliance with all applicable requirements of the Pittsylvania County Code 35-141D and 35-141E and 35-141F, not specifically stated in the conditions of the special use permit. So we have a positive motion and a second and 19 conditions. All those in favor, make it known by voting yes. All right, your motion is carried. Thank you all. Good luck on your project. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute break. The time is now 7:12. We'll get back here at 7:17, I guess. No, that's not right. 7:22. Thank you.
medicines. I take Plaquenil and
Okay.
methotrexate once a week.
Okay, hit the ball, girl. Lost the strike.
All right, if we can gather back up here, we will call the meeting back to order. And we will open the public hearing, case S-22-024, the docket Smith Mountain Lake LLC. Ms. Ragsdale, your report.
Case S-22-024, the docket SML LLC has petitioned for a special use permit on 4 parcels of land, a total of 23.25 acres located on State Road 626, Smith Mountain Road, and Locust Lane in the Callens-Gretna election district for a marina and a public garage. On February 7, 2023, the Planning Commission recommended by a 5-0 vote with opposition that the petitioner's request be granted with the following conditions. The applicant and residents on Locust Lane must enter into a road maintenance agreement. Locust Lane cannot be utilized as a construction entrance for any future construction plans. Must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. Must remain in compliance with AEP regulations. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman Jeff Wilson with the docket SML is here to represent the petition.
Hello, my name is Jeff Wilson with the ownership group of the dock at Smith Mountain Lake. So good evening and thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and board members, and county staff. We appreciate the time in hearing this request tonight. You'll find our case on page 663 of your packet. We are here to request your approval that our marina property would become a legal conforming use as a marina under the current RPD zoning. The dock has been a commercial marina property since 1966, is one of the first, if not the first, marina on Smith Mountain Lake. As a marina, we fall under the bounds and jurisdiction of AEP in providing public access to Smith Mountain Lake. Refer you to the slide in your handouts, handout page 3, which outline the goals of AEP's Shoreline Management Program. And these goals help document the provision of public access to Smith Mountain Lake. I'll refer you to 2 sections as seen in your handout and on the slides. Section 1.3.4. AEP Shoreline Management Plan has the goal of enhancing recreational opportunities by considering boating densities and navigation and maximizing available use of project waters by the public. Section 1.3.8, goal of the Shoreline Management Plan is striving for a balance that supports local economic interest, yet protects environmental and recreational resources, and that allows the public to enjoy these interests and resources. Currently, we're grandfathered in as a legal non-conforming use, even though it has been a commercial marina since 1966, and the Pittsylvania County zoning ordinance didn't begin until 1991. Staff has made the determination that in order to do any waterfront improvements, modifications, or add boat storage, we must have a special use permit. In essence, any expansion or modification to the marina would require becoming a legal conforming use, meaning that if we simply desired to add, modify, improve one single boat slip, this county determination says a special use permit is required. So this case is not specifically about adding more boat slips or boat storage to the site. At the base level, this is a request that a marina that has been a marina for almost 60 years continue to be a marina under a legal conforming use of RPD zoning. So we are thankful to be at this stage of the process. County staff recommended approval and Planning Commission recommended approval. We're requesting your approval of our application as submitted with the added component. In response to the Planning Commission and our neighbors' concerns, that we, the dock at Smith Mountain Lake, will take the responsibility of maintaining the private drive, Locust Lane, through a declaration of road maintenance. We will bear the burden, upkeep, and maintenance of this private access road within our property boundary up to the entrance and access to the dock at Smith Mountain Lake. This will be a formally recorded declaration of road maintenance that would fully satisfy the conditions proposed by the Planning Commission, excuse me, and more than fully address concerns of neighboring property owners regarding maintenance of Locust Lane. So in lieu of getting a road maintenance agreement with the neighboring property owners and/or not using the private drive as a construction entrance, with this road maintenance declaration, we will maintain the private drive, Locust Lane, up to our entrance and access point for the dock at Smith Mountain Lake. For a visual reference, I would refer you to the slides, your handouts, pages 5 and 6. And this display as well, which outlines Smith Mountain Road to Locust Lane to the access entry point of our property. So just to give reference on this display, travel up Smith Mountain Road. This is the private drive, Locust Lane. Turn down Locust Lane to the access point for the dock at Smith Mountain Lake. In summary, we are a marina. We've been a marina since 1966. There are many things in place to oversee marina operations, from AEP to VDH to county building code and permitting, all within the framework of providing public access to Smith Mountain Lake. We will certainly remain in compliance with VDH and AEP. In regard to VDH, we have a certificate to operate and are continuously working with them in regards to our development plans moving forward. You'll see the VDH documentation on page 700 of your county staff packet. In regard to AEP, AEP has stated Appalachian has reviewed preliminary plans for the development of dock structures along the shoreline associated with the dock at Smith Mountain Lake, and has determined that the existing and proposed uses are consistent with the classifications established by the Shoreline Management Program. Appalachian notes that commercial uses are already established and that the existing dock structures are currently associated with an established commercial use. Appalachian does not object to your efforts to seek Pittsylvania County approval for expansion. Appalachian considers the shoreline adjacent to the subject property to be appropriate for high-density commercial uses. AEP documentation can be found on page 701 and 702 of your county staff packet. We've gone above and beyond in responding to county staff and neighboring property owners, and done so on many components that are not directly related to this SUP application. So we're asking for you, the Board of Zoning Appeals, to approve this request, and would ask specifically their application be approved with the following conditions. 1, the applicant will record a declaration of road maintenance for Locust Lane from Smith Mountain Road to the entrance of the dock at SML. 2, applicant must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. And 3, applicant must remain in compliance with all applicable AEP regulations. So I'll reserve the remainder of my time for any questions or follow-up as needed. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant? Comments?
I guess it's time to ask some questions.
You ready?
Have you had any contact with the Department of Wildlife Resources regarding the planned expansion?
Yes, for the components that have their jurisdiction, so they've been involved in some of the items that affect the cove that the marina is situated in. So we've worked with them in actually adding an additional no-wake buoy to that area, which as marina operators we're responsible for. So we had one previously, worked with those jurisdictions, TLAC and otherwise, to add an additional no-wake buoy.
If I understand the plan, is to put a 120 boat dry storage unit, is that correct?
Dry stack boat storage.
Right. What statistical information did you all use to come up with that number, 120? Did you have any kind of, given the narrowness of the cove, and if I read it right, there's going to be a total of 197 boat slips with the additions and the takeaways and the 120 storage. Where did you get that number?
Various components. It's been a sort of third-party review for civil engineers looking at the space, but there's other jurisdictions involved that control sort of the density and capacity. So AEP, for one, is looking at all the density and capacity uses based on the size of that cove, and they go through some very sophisticated calculations based on the size of the cove, based on the amount of shoreline for our property. This is sort of a maximum density that AEP can regulate. Combined, VDH has their own regulations on number of slips and their own calculation for number of slips in the water and or dry stack storage boat slips that could sort of fill the space that the dock at Smith Mountain Lake has on the shoreline.
Okay. How many parking spaces are y'all planning to have?
Well, the conceptual plan has a great deal of parking on the site. Some of those combined for potential by right uses. Some of them as a part of the special use permitting. And so they saying the civil engineer side of site planning, we're calculating a number based on those numbers we were just backing into for the boat storage and the marine operations and the wet slips.
So the boats in this dry storage, are they privately owned, rented, sales, or combination of all three?
The boats in the dry stack storage.
Are they going to be privately owned boats? Are they going to be rental boats? Are they going to be boats for sale or what?
Privately owned boats for storage.
Privately owned, no rentals.
I'm not sure. Well, we do have rental boats at the facility. Some of those are used in wet slips. So it would use those spaces that we're backing into those numbers for on the water or dry stack storage, correct?
What hours do you all plan to operate?
Hours?
Hours.
We vary through the season, and we'd have to adjust. Again, this is somewhat conceptual, so we'd have to look at staffing, hours, and then there's just the capacity component of getting boats in the water, how many can operate to get to the fuel. So it'd be fairly standard hours during the in-season time frame.
Yeah.
Which are what? What are standard hours?
They vary. What is our main in-season hours right now? 9 to 7.
9 to 7. Well, I spoke with AEP myself. I called and had a nice conversation with a lady, and because they have no control over the number of boats, and they referred me to the Department of Wildlife Resources, and I called them and finally talked to a guy. And what concerns me most is there seems to be no control over how many boats go into Smith Mountain Lake. Nobody has control over the number of boats. There's no formal regulation regarding the number of boats, the boat traffic. The only thing they require is that the buoys be in place to have the no-wake, the buoy things. And and I'm not a boat person, I'll be honest with you, given my lack of limited knowledge of boating. But from a common sense point of view, 197 slips in that little bitty cove is, to me, is a lot of boats, and a lot, particularly on like a July 4th weekend, when there's a lot of people want to get out there on that boat. And from what I could see, there'll be some mad people because they can't get that boat in the water fast enough, and it just, I don't understand all this. But anyway, but I realize there's always going to be conflict between residential property owners and public water usage, and I certainly understand that. But I'm just looking at it from a common sense. It just don't make a lot of sense to me. But anyway, be that as it may, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman?
When you were talking about the number of slips in that cove, did you take into consideration the neighbors across the cove, that they have docks also? And that would attribute also to the number of boats within that cove. That is a very small cove. I've boated on that lake since 1966, and I knew Fred Munson when he built his dock there.
Right.
So I'm familiar with that area very well, and it just seems like that's a lot for that little cove.
That's right, and we are one of the neighbors across the cove. We own a couple of the parcels across the cove ourselves, so we're aware. And, you know, it does sort of back into a utilization rate, what can take place based on the space. So that goes back to both the AEP component and the VDH component. They both have measurable components of what can really happen back here on this setup. And so that's why they're going through those calculations on docks need to be this close, this many slips, this far apart. They measure 1/3 of the cove usage back in there so boats can have free access down the center of the cove while they're accessing either residents across the cove from us or the marine operations. So it's looked at from a various AEP, VDH, DWR, TLAC. Yes.
What I did find out, they don't look at anything beyond the shoreline. It's like the boat storage. They're not too worried about that.
To a degree, AEP, you're correct. VDH is tied into that from the back end as far as how many slips, and they have their calculation of what's a density usage allowable for the shoreline, because VDH has their own marina program through the Department of Environmental Health, and so we've been working with them on what's in place for the number of slips and proposed development plans.
The gentleman I talked to at the Department of Wildlife Resources, first question I asked him, are you familiar with the application for the expansion of the marina? No, I'm not. The second question I asked, do you know, have you seen the cove that this marina is located? No, I haven't. So I was a little concerned about the response from them regarding this application, because this is a big thing. But they seem to be loopless and scoopless and clueless.
Sure. So we're involved with the AEP communication and the VDH communication. From DWR and VDH side. They've been involved for the no-wake buoys, so they're responsible for that cove and the distance limitations in the water.
Yeah, I think it mentioned TLAP was responsible for the buoys, right? If I'm not mistaken.
In coordination with DWR, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
So are you planning to have any type of rental cabins or any type of units that are there? One time there were trailers on the property. Is any of that part of your plan?
So as a part of this application, site plan, conceptual, is a part of that, but not specifically for this application. So there's some by right uses for the current zoning that aren't specific to this necessarily special use permit. But as part of the site planning conceptual piece that we submitted for this process, we are looking at some by right uses for some cabin residential type component in this section,
How many would that be?
to be determined. I mean, we haven't, there's a bit of a chicken or the egg component of what comes first to get to that stage, but we're still evaluating that through some site planning, aside from this special use permit.
You know, at one time, there was a restaurant operated there. There's no longer, I guess that's no longer there. Are you planning on putting a restaurant in? Is that a part of your?
Not a part of these plans.
Why did you stop using the restaurant on the water, and why did you take the trailers out?
Restaurant there's still a grill on the water,
Mm-hmm.
on the dock. I'm not sure about the trailers. Our group took ownership in May of 2020.
Okay, all right.
There were some old, sort of abandoned cabin structures, and we did some site cleanup and demoed some of those that were in disrepair. I'm not sure about how far back the trailers may have dated.
Yeah. Anyway, earlier, he asked how many parking places you were going to have, and is that to be determined also?
Correct.
Okay. It's helpful to have that information, you know, how many cabins you want to have, how many parking places you want to have, how many slopes you want to have, to be able to approve it, and just thought I would mention that to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You refer often to AEP, that you're working with them. Now, getting back to the 120 boat dry storage, you referred to AEP directing that, or did I not hear you refer to AEP in the dry dock storage comment, or is that something that you and your group have come up with?
A little of both. It's sort of a tandem component in developing some plans on our end and some third-party site planning, civil engineering tied into AEP feedback and communication, in tandem tied into VDH communication and feedback.
And what's AEP telling you?
It's a little bit, again, of the chicken and the egg component in terms of who's doing what first and who can approve something first, but I'll just refer back to the components 701 and 702 of your packet from the county staff references where AEP stands and how they're looking at our proposal right now for the special use permit. They've reviewed the plans, determined that existing and proposed uses are consistent with the classifications established by the Shoreline Management Program. Commercial uses are already established, and existing dock structures are currently associated with an established commercial use. Appalachian does not object to your efforts to seek Pennsylvania County approval for expansion. Appalachian already considers the shoreline adjacent to the subject property to be appropriate for high-density commercial uses.
But I'm sorry, but nowhere in there do I hear 120 dry slip building. I'm kind of like Mr. Merrick's. That's a lot of boats, and Smith Mountain Lake gets extremely busy 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, and I guess my concern is if you get a call to put 100 boats in the water on July the 3rd, that's a concern.
Right, so we, again, are under sort of that purview of AEP to help provide public access to the lake as a marina.
I understand that.
And then
I'm with you there. I've got that part.
Yeah, I mean, there's the common sense utility usage of what can actually be done in terms of getting boats in the water. And so that's why we're backing into those numbers. AEP is not giving a lot of specifics. They're saying, hey, you guys get your approvals from the county on your special use permit, and then we can take some next steps forward. Really, those items should happen concurrently, but AEP's taking that chicken or the egg, which comes first, saying they're going to work with us to develop that density, maximum capacity, make sure it fits all their coordination components and their calculus of what fits for this shoreline, this width of the cove, and getting in the water.
That seems like it puts a lot of pressure on the Board of Zoning Appeals here to okay 120 slip boat storage facility without, quite frankly, any guidance from the applicant.
And our guidance is coming from AEP and VDH, so there's sort of multiple components that are trying to work in tandem here. Otherwise, the wheels just keep spinning.
But who told you, let me go back, let me spin the wheel back around. Who told you 120 slip dry dock storage, I guess is my question.
So that's a number that's being backed into from general guidance from AEP, specific guidance from VDH. VDH Marina program through their Department of Environmental Health has specific calculations for the number of slips, what constitutes a slip. So they count slips in the water as one. Dry stack boat storage slips are an equation they use to count as 1/3. And so based on that density, how much shoreline frontage you have, where your facilities are, you mentioned the restaurant, where the restrooms, they have to be in a certain distance to those facilities. So it's sort of backed into those different parties involved.
I guess I'm confused.
Doing a lot of backing, yeah.
It is, and I'm, we don't have, I guess, we don't have any documentation from VDH or AEP or, quite frankly, you as the applicant telling us this is how we have arrived at this number and this is what AEP said and this is what VDH said. We're going back and forth.
Understood. And that goes forward as you get to the permitting through VDH. So we propose these plans, they've looked at them, given general agreement, but then you have to move to the next step. We're back to the chicken and the egg. We don't have a special use permit. Then we would need to do permitting through VDH, where they would then approve number of slips based on these facilities, based on this distance from the shoreline, based on these number of slips. So I guess what I'm saying is there's outside of the Board of Zoning Appeals, we're asking to become a conforming use under the RPD zoning. And so we would be having this discussion if we had a proposal to add or modify one slip. And what we are stating and asking is that other jurisdictions will be involved in the definitive permitting, number, density, capacity, AEP and VDH outside of BZA county special use permitting.
I don't know, but I feel like, and I'm sorry, but yeah, it's a great picture, it's a great little drawing, but there's too many, we got to do this, somebody's got to say this before this is done, and then we're going to approve something that we have no clue what we're approving. And that really bothers me. I mean, I'm sorry, I think we need it. I'm not against the marina, but I think the planning of this particular marina expansion, there's a lot about the chicken and the egg. Well, I don't really care about chicken and eggs. I want to see a plan that documents everything and has everybody's input in it, that shows exactly what's going to happen, where it's going to happen, how many boat slips, why we have so many boat slips. I just don't see that in this application. I may be the only one, and that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add to that, that I believe that this is the vision that I have in my mind of additional boat storage, additional access, restaurant, cabins, could be a really great thing for Pittsylvania County. And so I 100% support that vision. But I really would like to see some engineering drawings in saying, hey, we're going to have this number of slips, we're going to have this number of cabins, we're going to have this number of parking places, we're going to have a basketball court, a pickleball court, a beach, whatever you're going to have that you're going to draw people to your facility is what, you know, I would like to see to say, hey, this is it. But I 100% believe that improving the property in Pittsylvania County for our tax base and for access for our citizens is a great thing, you know. But at any rate.
Mr. Yaben, you got any comments?
Well, it's, you know, that's my concern, that there's just too many slips there at 120, you know. It just...
Ma'am, please. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Thank you.
I just have a hard time wrapping my head around supporting of 120 slips for storage there. I do know there is need for storage on this side of the lake. That would be helpful to people. I know there's a waiting list of marinas that if you want to store your boat, it's about probably a year's wait, so I realize that. But I kind of agree with the other guy that we're asked to approve something, we don't know what we're approving.
We've backed into the number with the other jurisdictions involved. You know, the marina used to have much more activity, utilization, many more slips long before we were owners. There was dry stack storage on the site. There were other wet slips on the site. Again, we came in May of 2020, cleaned up a lot of the stuff that was in disrepair, upland and on the water. So this component, again, is to ask your approval that we can move forward with these jurisdictions that have the oversight on those capacity and density components to make some progress of continuing to make this a public use access for Pittsylvania County, storage access, benefit for Pittsylvania County, clean it up under these provisions of dry stack storage and wet slip as presented on the plans.
Any more questions or comments for the applicant? Okay, we may have some a little later. Thank you, sir. Okay, the only person signed up to speak is Mr. Glenn Pulley.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Some of you know me. Some of you have known me for decades. I came to Danville in 1976 and joined a law firm called Clement Wheatley, and was with that firm until 2015. And I joined a firm in Roanoke then. And that firm is Gentry Locke, and my law partner, John Puvac, who is a land use lawyer, is with me tonight. And he would like to share some of the time that we have, which I understand is 10 minutes. Is that right? Okay. I mentioned that I started working as a lawyer in 1976 under the tutelage of Mr. Stuart Wheatley, who told me that if you're winning, stop talking. And so I'm inclined to not talk a lot tonight. It sounds like many of you members on the board have already understood one of the primary concerns that we have. And when I say we, I want to say who the we are. We have residents who we represent. They are 29 that my firm represents, who are opposed to the granting of this special use permit. If you're a client, would you stand up? please? And will you just affirm that you're opposed to the granting of? All right, thank you. Many of these folks are on the Locust Lane side of the cove, and some are on the other side of the cove, which has been accurately described as a very narrow, short cove that already has boat traffic from the permanent residences there and from the marina. This proposal would add quite a bit more under circumstances which are candidly acknowledged by the applicant to be uncertain at this time. One of the points that we made in the submission that I hope all of you have seen, we sent an email to Mr. Easley on Friday, and I'm sure, I hope you've had a chance to receive it and read it. If not, we've brought extra copies tonight. But one of the points we make is this is a residential planned unit development district. And the purpose, the stated purpose of this district is and has been to promote a well-planned living environment, to encourage a variety in housing and supporting community facilities while encouraging accessory commercial uses. Now, the term accessory, we all know what that means. It means that there's a main thing and there's something that is an accessory to the main thing. Well, the main thing in this residential district that we're talking about, we call it an RPD district. The main thing is residential use, which is supplemented or supported by a commercial use. The application, as the conversation has gone tonight, makes it abundantly clear that there is no residential use that is embedded in this application. It's all commercial use. There's a request to expand a commercial use known as a marina, and there's an additional request to construct what is called a public garage, but it's really not a public garage. It's a dry boat storage facility. And there's a difference between a public garage. I'm not saying we want a public garage, but there's a difference between a public garage and a dry boat storage facility. But either way, whether you call it one thing or what it really is, it is going to add a huge number of boats to that very confined area. So I wanted to make that point tonight, and then I'm going to make a second point, and I'll turn it over to my partner, John Puvak. The second point I want to make has to do with the Planning Commission's vote. And Ms. Ragsdale, I thought I heard you say the vote was 5-0, but it
should have been 5-2.
5-2, right. Maybe I misheard you. But the vote was 5-2, and I wasn't present at the Planning Commission, but I have heard from others who were present. There seemed to be in the minds of at least some of the members of the Planning Commission this idea that, as the applicant said tonight, that the AEP, they control everything related to the cove, to the waterway itself. Well, that's just not true. You control the use of the properties, and the properties include the riparian rights. We all know what riparian rights are. These properties that are along the cove and that adjoin the cove, these property owners enjoy riparian rights that are meaningful property interests. And those riparian rights will be compromised and affected by the type of use on this cove that is being proposed by this applicant. And so your job as the BZA is to do your own assessment of what is going to be the impact on the various properties that are already enjoying the cove. The AEP has a role, there's no doubt about that, but it is not an exclusive role. It is not a role that preempts you, the Board of Zoning Appeals, from exercising your duty to protect the property rights of those who are within the geographical zone where this proposed endeavor is scheduled. We cited in, primarily, frankly, for the BZA's counsel, Mr. Dadak, we cited a very well-reasoned and well-written decision by a circuit court judge in Northumberland County, Judge Tolliver. It's the Jennings case. And I'm just going to quote one, it's a 10-page opinion, but in that opinion, Judge Tolliver specifically said, "The court finds that the grant of general zoning authority over land alone necessarily or fairly implies that localities may exercise the essential and indispensable regulations of structure and the uses on the water, which by their very nature are inseparable from the zoning permitted use of the upland." So what that is saying is that counties who have zoning authority have the authority to make decisions about the use of properties, and in doing so, they should take into consideration the riparian rights. That's what that language from the court says. I'm going to defer now.
Before he runs out of time, let me make a few points. He said he'd be brief, and he spoke for 8 minutes. So that's why we submit a letter when the time's short, the night is long. We hope you read those 5 points. I want to focus on one key point that was brought in the applicant's presentation. The BZA usually can mitigate impacts, right? Mitigate impacts through conditions. I think that's an attempt here, but the conditions just can't mitigate this use. Really can't mitigate such that the BZA can make the finding it has to make, right? The finding is black and white. It's that use will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property, right? And I think that the comments by the BZA make that clear. What we heard from the applicant tonight, those conditions, staff made a condition that won't use Locust Lane. I think the applicant is pushing back on that and proposing Locust Lane with shared use. That road and that ground was plowed years ago. You know, the applicant got a roadmap in 2021 when the Planning Commission rejected this to come back with a number of items. Those items have not been done. So we're here, we're back now a couple years later. So the conditions really are a problem. You know, they just, even if those conditions are there, the county does not want to be the arbiter of using this road or not using that road. That's a problematic condition. So really, again, coming back to, if you can mitigate a use through conditions, then it should be approved. It's just not possible here given what the proposed uses are and the conditions. Again, the only other comment I'll make is the comprehensive plan. I think that hasn't been mentioned, but the comprehensive plan is important. I recognize AEP and their shoreline management plan says high density commercial. The comprehensive plan says medium residential. So again, going back to what Mr. Poley said, residential uses are important. If this applicant was coming forward with the concept plan and the rezoning that was done in 2006, we wouldn't be here. We would have told our clients to stay home, and that's what would be built here. But that's not what's being proposed. So this marina's been shoehorned. There's a variance. There's non-conforming status. It shouldn't be expanded. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wilson, would you like to rebut those comments?
Go back to the slide presentation real quickly. It's okay. There you go. So I guess it's in rebuttal and in response and in summary, to our opening comments and the other feedback. Just want to reiterate the AEP components involved in this property, their jurisdiction and their oversight, and how we've worked with them, the other jurisdictions, VDH, and the county, to bring us here tonight. Again, starting with AEP, they are working to maximize the available use of the waters by the public. They have goals to allow the public to enjoy these interests and resources at Smith Mountain Lake. This property used to be much more dense, much more capacity and usage on the water, and boat slips, and dry stack storage. There were water slides on the property, all kinds of other stuff. The property is suited and situated under AEP's shoreline management plan to look at our proposal and manage the density. That, in combination with VDH, their oversight for the number of slips, the location of slips, location of facilities in regards to those slips for the property, have backed us into this number and proposal that we're presenting to you this evening. So I just want to reiterate that there are other jurisdictional pieces involved to control the density and capacity for the dock at Smith Mountain Lake. AEP, VDH, mentioned DWR, TLAC, so they will all have continuing impacts to oversee what's taking place on the shoreline for the dock at Smith Mountain Lake. We can't get anywhere without some approval to be a conforming use as a marina, which has been a marina. There are multiple generations of families that come visit the marina almost daily to come visit what's been there for years as a marina to provide them, their children, their grandchildren. Some of them aren't even coming to use the boat slips or the store. They're coming to feed the fish in the water and visit the property. It's had this density before. We're requesting and proposing through this proposal to add wet slips, to add the dry stack storage, knowing that we're continually going to be under this jurisdiction of AEP, VDH, DWR, TLAC. And so that's why we brought forward these conditions, asking for your approval that we become a conforming use marina, which has been a marina for a long time. We want it to continue to be a marina. We want to continue to make improvements that we've already begun to make in cleaning up the disrepair and providing access to the public. The county wants this to be a public access to Smith Mountain Lake. There are guards in place from these other jurisdictions to manage the density and capacity. But the county is never going to allow us or anybody else to move forward unless we take the steps of becoming a conforming use marina, continuing to be under the bounds of AEP, VDH, DWR, and TLAC. And so that's why we're asking for your request to approve it with the conditions as presented tonight.
Any other questions for the applicant? Comments? All right, thank you, sir. The time is now 8:12. We'll close the public hearing. comments? Opinions? I have a question for Ms. Ragsdale. I'm probably supposed to know the answer, but I don't. Can an applicant withdraw a permit or an application without penalty, and how does that work?
Generally not once the public hearing has been closed.
Sorry,
Generally not once the public hearing has been closed.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, folks, we got to make a decision. We can do a positive motion with conditions, or we can do a negative motion because we cannot mitigate conditions, adverse conditions.
My view on this is the Planning Commission made a recommendation of 5-2 with some conditions. The applicant has came back, based on how I see it, requesting approval with different conditions. I just don't feel good about that, because that's sending me a sign that the applicant is not good with what the Planning Commission had recommended to us. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions on this that probably needs to be settled and worked out before this moves forward. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, I am extremely supportive of expanding access to the lake, especially in Pittsylvania County. I just don't, at this moment, I don't feel, I'd love to see this place expand. And it is in disarray at the moment. And it would be great to have it updated and be something that would be attractive for our community and the people in the surrounding areas. But it's really difficult to see that without much information. And give you an example with the 120 slips, you know, how many people are going to use those slips on Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July? Are you going to have, how much traffic are you going to have around the wet slips as you're putting these boats in the water, taking them out? You know, I don't know. And Mr. Yeaman would probably know a lot more about that than I would, but you know, if we had some more information, I could be extremely supportive of the project. But as it stands, it's hard to have that good feeling that we've mitigated the adverse effects to the neighbors.
Mr. Yeaman, you got any comments?
Well, I kind of agree with him that it's just, we just don't have enough information. I just think 120 slips with the others, but that makes it 196 slips. That's a lot for a very small code.
Mr. Craddock?
Well, I don't know much about boating, but it sounds like that's a lot of boat slips for that small of a cove. It was mentioned several times that it used to be much more dense than it is now. I think that would be good information to know. You say we have, that would be a good piece of information where we would at least know at one point in time there was X number of slips there and it worked well. But I just don't think I just don't have a good comfort level of approving this with this many slips, not knowing if it's too many or if it'll work or not.
I'm kind of like Mr. Craddock. I don't know very much about boating, but I think that's a lot of slips at this time. I'm all for progress, but I just don't think we know enough. It's a lot of unknowns, I think, at this time.
Well, I can give you a little bit of information because, like I said, I voted on that lake. I'm aware of that cove, and AEP stopped the marina. There were not slips. There was only where you could pull up against the dock years ago. But all of the boats were anchored on a mooring line out in the middle of the cove. And so you did have to maneuver through. AEP stopped that because it was dangerous. They do not allow that anymore. So that's the story as far as how many boats. There were a lot of boats in there back in the 70s and early 80s. But I know that the AEP did stop allowing them to do that.
If I may, Mr. Chair, there's also the third option of tape. I heard a lot of information, questions about having more information. There's always the option of tabling the matter out to your next board meeting for the opportunity to receive more information if you think that would be helpful.
Well, I was getting ready to say, we got three choices, either positive motion, negative motion, or we table the issue. And to get that information to us, or more, we need to ask what do we want to know? You know,
Right. I'm in line with the board that we simply don't have enough information right now to make a remotely intelligent decision on this. And we're not getting any more information tonight. So I'm of the opinion, if the board is of the opinion that we table this motion or this application, and then we would hear it again, we would reconsider it as old business in May. Is that correct? We would not have a public hearing.
That is correct. And May would be within the required 60 days, but you would need to act on it at that time.
Okay.
You could not table it again.
What's you thinking on that? Because I think we're all of the opinion that progress would be extremely good in that spot of the lake. The marina will continue to operate. If we don't do anything, it's going to continue to operate as it is. It's not like we're going to close it down, but I think we would all like to see progress there. The county would certainly like to see the progress, but I'm afraid right now I don't have enough information to make a vote. I don't want to make a negative vote, but I can't make a positive vote, and that's just where I am now. So, do we vote to table it? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to table this case until the May meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion for Mr. Stone.
Second.
A second for Mr. Merrick's.
May I make a comment before we vote?
Yes, sir.
If the board votes to table this, really what I would like to hear some more is about this road that we heard very little about tonight. You know, staff recommended a new entrance from the main road. I can't think of it. Yeah, from 626. And I've seen so many proposals here, and then there's the applicant is suggesting a declaration of road maintenance. I don't know what that means, of Locust Lane. So it really needs to, if it comes back before us, it needs to be very clear to me, access to and from, and very laid out very clear. Nothing in the gray area.
Mr. Wilson, we'll put that in the hands of your company, that we've got to have some more information before we can remotely make a positive decision along these lines. And you've got until May, what's the date? 12th or something? 12th?
May 8th.
May 8th will be our next meeting.
But if I understand it, there's no presentations at that meeting, so the information we need needs to come to your office and get to us before then.
The applicant could present the information, but there
Okay.
wouldn't be no public hearing.
Okay, that's fine.
So. Can you,
How would we be able to respond to the additional information that is
Ms.
submitted?
Mr. Pulley, I
Ask the attorney.
Mr. Day, yeah, we'll let our attorney respond to that.
I've never had the situation come up, to be honest. It can be routed through staff. That'd probably be the best way. If you could provide it to staff ahead of time, we'll make it part of the packet, which will be then publicly available.
Yeah,
And then the public can always submit comments in written form anyway, so we just ask you submit something in writing. if that's
So we would
okay.
submit something in writing before May the 8th, which would presuppose that the staff would receive something from the applicant before that date. So is there a date on which the applicant will need to present the information to staff so we'll have an opportunity to respond? You see what I'm?
I do.
Okay.
Staff would request the information from the applicant the last Thursday of April so that we have the last Thursday of March, so we have adequate time to prepare the staff summary and incorporate it in the packet to make sure that the packet is available to you and the public when it's advertised in April.
And we'd like to have it sooner than that if we could, so that we can digest it and ask questions. And so,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second to table this hearing. All those in favor, make it known. Mr. Yeaman, it says it's waiting on you. All right, we have a tabled hearing. And with that being said, this meeting is adjourned. We will gather again in May.